Hello, Jane. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a wonderful late May day in Chicago, and we are fortunate to find ourselves at the Poetry Foundation, hosted by Michelle Boone, the president, who is in our inaugural Phil D class. And you and I were just talking about poems and how nice it would be to start off our conversation by reading a poem. And we found one by Carl Sandburg, a well-known Chicagoan, and it's just a few lines. It's called The New Education. The future is made of the same stuff as the present, and in the present, we shape the future with our words, our hearts, and our hands. A wonderful way to convey the spirit with which we welcome you today.
Yes, indeed.
And so we are honored to have Jane Chu, a distinguished leader whose career bridges the world of the arts, philanthropy, and business with us today. In 2014, she was appointed the 11th chairperson of the National Endowment for the Arts, a role she held until June 2018. During her tenure, she traveled to all 50 states and 4 countries, visiting more than 200 communities and making over 400 site visits to engage with artists, civic and government leaders, philanthropists, and the public. Under her leadership, the NEA awarded $430 million in support of the arts across 16,000 communities in every U.S. state, jurisdiction, and congressional district. In 2016, the NEA was recognized as the #1 place to work in the federal government among small agencies. A proud daughter of Chinese immigrants, Jane was born in Shawnee, Oklahoma, and raised in Arkadelphia, Arkansas. Her academic background is as impressive as her professional one. She holds a bachelor's degree in piano performance and music education from Ouachita Baptist University, a master's in piano pedagogy from Southern Methodist University, an associate degree in visual arts from Nebraska Wesleyan University, an MBA from Rockhurst University, and most importantly, her crowning academic achievement was a PhD in philanthropic studies from the Indiana University Lilly Family School of Philanthropy, which has deepened her integration of scholarship and practice. She was also a Distinguished Alumna Awardee for our school for her service post-graduation. Thank you for joining us today, Jane.
It's my pleasure.
As I mentioned at the outset, you are joining our Phil D students, the Professional Doctorate in Philanthropic Leadership in Chicago. This is the first cohort who is gathering for residency to prepare them to write their applied research project in their final year. When we were designing the Phil D, we often refer to your experience in your first PhD class at the school. You undertook this journey knowing that you were not headed for a career in academia. What are the most memorable experiences you have from the process, both challenges and breakthroughs that you had?
Well, sometimes people think that if you're on the fund giving side, that it is very different from the fundraising. But I found, having been on both sides, that it's very similar, because really all you're doing, whether you are giving funds or you are raising funds, is that you're connecting to something that you care about, or you're connecting others to things that they care about within the project that you are supporting. So there's a lot more in common. Giving money is much harder when you really want to give intentionally and want to see an impact and you care. Raising funds is the side where you're wanting to make a difference. So there's a lot more similarities than people realize.
You often hear from people who are fundraisers who think that it's so much easier on the fund disbursement side of the equation, but you didn't find that.
I didn't find that. I found it to be the opposite. There were more similarities because people do care when they want to give.
Wonderful. So you got to delve deeply into the relationship with the community and the arts, and it seems obvious to those of us who've learned or have read your bio and the distinguished career you took afterwards. But in your own words, how did your doctorate figure into your subsequent career trajectory?
Well, I actually took data from every community, and I analyzed hundreds of communities, several hundred that had art centers, and equally the number that did not have art centers. And then I ran economic data, sociology data, and took them from the census reports, and I compared them to see if there was any type of vitality or more vitality in those communities that did have art centers versus those that did not. And then you could really dive in and say, well, why is that vitality there? What kind of people are there to really make it happen? Were the philanthropists helping in that area? Was the community in support of the center? And then you really start hearing the stories of what makes a community. And I did this all through art centers, so it was fascinating to me. And I got to learn about the art center I was associated with because I could look at the different types of characteristics in the community, all through data.
Wonderful. And so how did you take this research with you when you went to chair the National Endowment for the Arts?
Well, I thought about similar characteristics that I found in the research. For one thing, when I toured across the nation, I would often go to art centers, and I would already have known them because I had studied them so much in my own research. So that was a pleasure to know the background of those art centers and have people understand that I really did understand more about their center specifically because I had researched it. So that was probably the most fun. But then really just to understand how art centers operate or how the community operates, not specifically just art centers, but there was just something there that helped me understand the role that the arts play in sparking that vitality in a community. And then there was something there that helped people understand philanthropy.
So you have done something that I think is something that we see leaders do. They kind of are able to synthesize different perspectives and different areas of knowledge. And our PhD program is quite interdisciplinary in its effort to try to understand the important role that philanthropy plays in our society. How did you establish this facility to continue to integrate different fields and different perspectives so successfully in your career?
Well, one of the things I loved about being able to look at a specific community is that it's hard to extract one piece of the community and leave everything out, because that's just not how a community works. If you're looking at the bridges and then you're looking at the roads, for example, do you want to find out where things are functioning and when they're not functioning and how they interrelate with each other? You want to look at the different types of personalities in the community, who the leaders are, how it fits together with the level of philanthropy, the level of commercial, public and private partnerships. And as you look at all of these aspects that sound like a stew, they really fit in together to create the community as a whole. I learned that you can't really leave one aspect out of it, but the community that thrives has multiple aspects.
I like the image of a stew. Hopefully it's also quite nourishing intellectually and spiritually and artistically as well. In the Academy, we are so good at looking at what are the separate ingredients and really understanding them in depth. And then the challenge for a leader in the real world is to put them all together and to understand how the stew works.
That's exactly right. I want to emphasize, though, it's important in the Academy to, and it was a great opportunity to isolate each of the ingredients. Are you bringing the best quality ingredients to the fore? If it's not, what should you be doing to improve that specific aspect of the stew? But as a whole in a community, when you put the stew together and you find enough flavor and you know that you've put the right ingredients and the proportions together, that's when you really have a thriving community. And that's what I found by looking first in the Academy and analyzing those aspects and really looking at the patterns. I could take those same ingredients and look at different communities across the nation and see what kind of ingredients do you have that make your community thrive, what kind of do you have over here. But it was because I was able to isolate those aspects during my research.
In some ways, you've already kind of given us hints about how this works, but I was also thinking, and we do see that there are so many brilliant leaders advancing vital causes and social impact around the country, around the world, who don't have doctorates or advanced degrees. Clearly, you don't need a degree to perform at the very highest levels. Then why do it?
Oh, from a personal point of view, I come from an immigrant family, and there is something, at least it was with my parents who immigrated from China, that said, we've immigrated to the United States. They met here in Chicago, but they both came from China. And they said, we've immigrated to the United States, and there was this underlying belief that you who was born in the United States will be doing more than I did. But in addition to just my family's growing up with my parents and my family and their expectations, I loved the idea of going deep into my own research, and I learned even technically how to go deeper and what to look for and what's really good scientific research. And so it helped set the context for me. I think in the philanthropic and the nonprofit sector, there is an important aspect of context. What is going on in society? How does it all fit together? What helps philanthropists want to give? And so knowing how to scientifically do that research at a proper quality level helped me get better context. It helped me understand the stories of our hearts. So I really appreciate having had that opportunity.
So one of the purposes of enveloping great leaders in the ecosystem of research and discovery is to learn from them as well, so that those who come afterwards can benefit from what they have learned. What are the key learnings that you have accumulated in your career which you hope others will take and be able to advance their causes more effectively as a result?
Well, one key learning is that I actually learned in the process of doing my research is that how you do something is just as important as what you do. So it's important to check off on your list all of the things that you need to get done and accomplish, but how you do it, the quality you choose to have when you're going through the research, the specific information that you need as you're doing the research, how you do something and how you distribute that information is something that leaders can follow all the time, because whether I did good research was just as important as the fact that I did research in the first place. How I did something is just as important as what I do, and leaders can pay attention to that. We don't emphasize that as much as I wish we did.
That's a really important lesson. The how is as important as the what you do, right? So, and of course, they're very, very closely related to each other, especially as you're trying to teach somebody. Teaching them the how is really important, and as also all of the things that envelop the steps that actually get things done is how you do it, how the community that you talked about earlier ends up coming alongside you or not. It's the journey, right? And so let's ask you a little bit about your journey and the one you took to your levels of leadership. What are some of the experiences that were important, formative for you, both negative and positive, to help you craft this leadership approach that you're starting to share a little bit with us about?
Well, it actually focused on my life when I was growing up as a kid. I mentioned that my parents had immigrated from China, met here in Chicago, and then my father became a college professor, and he taught at a school in Oklahoma where I was born. And I really didn't think anything about it until my father died. He became ill and died when I was 9. And those drawing lessons and those piano lessons that I was taking became more than just an extracurricular activity. I realized then that I did not have enough words in my regular life, in my linear conversations, to express the grief over the loss of my father. And maybe many 9-year-olds don't. But I certainly didn't, because I had parents who spoke Chinese at home, I spoke English at school. And so when I had the arts, however, I could go deeper in my ability to express myself. I could express myself with my heart. The arts allow for a holistic way of expressing ourselves, and I could incorporate my heart beyond just linear everyday conversation. And so I found that I could belong when I honored myself through expressing through the arts. And it has continued all of these years through how I lead, and that's at the heart of why I say how you do something is just as important as what you do, because there's something in there that is much more authentic for me and more holistic, because I was able to express myself through many forms of vocabulary, not just words. Words are important, but they're not the only way.
And is that something that you were aware of or you were drawing on earlier in your career, or did it take some time for you to be able to embrace the arts as being key to how you would lead?
I was expressing myself through the arts intuitively, and I just knew that it was so authentic for me. I didn't put words to it and label the fact that it was another vocabulary until much, much later. But I still go back to saying that original way of me responding by using the arts was the right way for me. And that's how I wanted to be as a leader as well.
Well, we're going through kind of a disruptive time. I think everybody's facing disruptive times as we sit here toward the end of May in 2025. And you must have encountered kind of surprises and unexpected moments in your career. Can you share some that were formative for you or that gave you some important lessons?
What I draw from that has helped me through times of ambiguity has really been my mother's story, because my mother was a high school student in China when the Civil War broke out in 1949. There were some times where she did not try to boil the ocean, as they say, because many times if you don't know what's going on, you want to try to handle everything, but she would figure out what the next step was appropriate for that next piece in her life, and then the next step. Sometimes it's 5 minutes from now, and sometimes it's a longer period of time. But that way of thinking, of getting through ambiguity, she has been a good demonstration for me. She's been my hero. And that's what I go to when I find myself in situations where I don't know what's going to happen next, or what happens over here all of a sudden changed to there. She was in that so many times during her escape that I draw from that.
That's great. Yeah, I've been thinking a little bit about generations that preceded us who lived through constant civil wars and warfare and how they managed on a day-to-day basis. You know, we're still not quite there yet in terms of our time of disruption, but we're looking forward to some of the advice that you'll share with our Phil D students this evening. And I think for our audience who will be tuning in, maybe you could talk a little bit more about steeling yourself for dealing with the demands of leadership, in the sense that leadership can also be constantly a situation where you're facing constant demands, and you have to steel yourself. You have to manage that. What advice do you give to students who are preparing themselves for leadership roles at a time that is not exactly parallel to, but at least echoing more seriously disruptive and possibly violent and transformational periods?
Well, some of the aspects that I think about are very tactical. For one is the thing that we should not do ever is we should not give our personal power away to people who do not know how to manage that. And so when I find myself in a situation where I want to react strongly, I have to make sure I can manage myself first. And I'm not talking about putting a damper on myself. I'm just trying to say I don't want to give my personal power away. So stilling my mind from the racing thoughts of everything I have to do on a daily basis, or how I'm going to respond every morning when I wake up. But before I get up, I go through about 20 minutes of stilling my mind. And what has happened over the time that I've done that process, which has now been in over years, I have found that I am able to receive thoughts that have more wisdom. I find that I've been able to figure out how to manage myself. One of the things that I do want to throw in, so I'm so glad that this program, this DPhil program, and the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy, including my own degree, I'm so glad that there is this program and this presence, because I don't think right now in the middle of ambiguity there has ever been a better time for the philanthropic sector, the philanthropic nonprofit sector, because so often there's this temptation to think that there are two aspects of our American community, and that one of them is the private sector and the commercial sector, the marketplace, and another one is the government. But there's actually a three-legged stool, and that third leg is the philanthropic nonprofit sector, because they have aspects of both of the other sectors, but at the same time they're about bringing people together. They're about finding those ways to not only just fill in the gaps, but be there to make the three-legged stool strong, because a two-legged stool isn't going to stand up nearly as easily as that third sector. There has never been a time and more strong need for the philanthropic sector now. So having the program, the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy, very important.
That's great. Well, I mean, we of course appreciate your words and agree with you 1,000%, which is why one of the reasons that we have our school, and you've been such an important alumnus to show us kind of what is possible with an education that we provide. But I think it's also something that is difficult sometimes to convey to people because it is not something you learn about in civics class. In civics class, you learn about the formal institutions of government, and of course people know the careers you go into to do business. So it's a neglected, in the general imagination of our society, it's kind of a neglected space, and yet it is the source of so much imaginative possibilities about what our society can do. And so the way you use the arts to to imagine the cohesion and to imagine what's next. Maybe you can talk a little bit about kind of the imaginative possibilities when you bring the arts and philanthropy together.
Well, the arts and philanthropy both, but I would extend that to say so many of the other aspects and the professions, the fields in the philanthropic nonprofit sector are doing similar work and good work. If you go back to the way, at least I was first trained years ago, decades ago, about what leadership was, it looks like we have really gone from a shift to a different kind of leadership. Before, we used to reward people and say they were leaders if they really knew a specific subject well. So there's nothing wrong with being a subject matter expert. But today, we need leaders who know how to synthesize pieces that don't necessarily look like they belong together. They might be in different orbits, but who are comfortable enough to bring those pieces together that are disparate, bring them together and find how you work together. That is the kind of leader we need now, that synthesis leader. I use jazz as an example. Oh, the wonderful genre of jazz music. And there are times when a jazz musician will stand up and take a riff on her own and express herself, and then there are other times when the single musician will sit down and the whole jazz group comes together for the sake of the piece. That's a lot of the leadership. Are you comfortable enough in standing by yourself to take that riff and at the same time understanding, because some real aspects of leadership are about stepping back sometimes and stepping back for the good of the whole. And the real musician, the real jazz musician knows how to manage those aspects to make a truly good composition. Similar to the nonprofit sector, so how do you know when to synthesize important aspects of it, especially those that don't fit together? And how do you know when it's time to step forward and emphasize something? That's what we're in now, and the nonprofit sector, I think, the philanthropic sector, does that very, very well. It's nature to do that. There's never been a better time in my life to understand how it fits together from a systems point of view, from the initiatives perspective, how you bring people together, as opposed to only having one category of people here or understanding here, another one over there. They don't match. It's very clear, but how do you bring them together? Philanthropic sector.
So let me ask you, I think those are inspirational words about that wonderful generative connection that can be made. But let me ask you a more tactical question about philanthropic funder. You led a major agency that was a philanthropic funder, and we sit in the Pro-Tree Foundation that has a remarkable philanthropic history. Wouldn't be here except for some amazing philanthropy. What is it? How is philanthropy supporting the arts in your opinion these days? Is it doing enough? What are things we should be knowing or thinking about when it comes to how philanthropy is funding the arts in our society at this particular moment in time?
There are an array of ways to participate in philanthropy, and in some ways we can celebrate that there are philanthropists at every aspect. Some of them really like to fund large initiatives. Some of them think in terms of systems, so they'll fund a system as opposed to one specific project. Other times they feel like their money makes more of an impact by funding a specific project that means a lot to them, it's connected to them. And so I would think that one of the best ways to celebrate philanthropy and encourage more, especially if you're focusing specifically on the arts, is to make sure that people understand the menu of opportunities they have to give and the importance of them, and that there really is something for everyone. So philanthropists get to think about what means a lot to them, but at the same time, they do need to understand the systems and the processes, and they're interwoven with each other. There was a time when different nonprofits were off by themselves operating, but it's important right now to have partnerships with each other and partnerships also with other sectors. And so philanthropists who think about how to help that whole sector, and sometimes it means shoring up a small organization that just cannot survive without more money to be able to operate. And really they're boots on the ground. They're really reaching people that no one else could reach. And sometimes it means leveraging to a larger organization because they have a broader reach. You have to look at the ways you like to give as well as who to give to, but there's a need everywhere, and if the philanthropists do understand and can understand more that there are menus of options to give, I think that would be the first start. What when you go to a restaurant and they hand you a menu, you say, I'm going to go after what I want. Well, let's give them a real menu of understanding of what's important right now, what to support, but absolutely we need the support.
What are you working on these days that you'd like to share with us so we know what happens next for you?
I've always wanted to draw, and so I've been on the administrative side of the arts and philanthropy for much of my professional life, but I'm returning now to what I wanted to do when I was 15, which is draw. So I've drawn several art portfolios and series of several hundred drawings, and look forward to sharing that when it's ready. But I've learned more about the drawings that I've created as a result of the research that I learned, the depth of research, the quality of research that I learned through my Indiana program.
And if people want to follow what you'll be up to, is there a website they can go to?
Jane Chu Art is my website.
Jane Chu Art, that's great. And what kind of art do you reach out to give you joy and maybe to distract you from the pressures of following the news these days?
Anytime I go into the arts at all, I'm instantly lost in time. And that's a sign to me when I am able to do any process, but certainly the arts do that for me, where I look up and say, it's been 3 hours and I didn't realize it. There's something about the flow of my energy. There's something about losing track of time because you know you are either so focused or so loving the process that helps me create, hopefully, more quality art. That's when I know that I've stilled my mind. So all these things that we've talked about, it all fit together into one stew. So I still keep up with the news, and I still participate in those important aspects of leadership that I feel like I need to do. But there's something about each of us finding those moments of either stillness or those moments, whatever we're working on, that give us that time to flow and look up then and say, I didn't realize the time had gone by. Those are actually more gifts than just losing track of time. They're giving us the opportunity to think clearer, the opportunity to have more wisdom, even in situations where it's never been done before.
That's wonderful. I'm going to definitely remember the stilling, S-T-I-L-L, to stilling yourself, to preparing yourself, which ends up stealing, S-T-E-E-L, strengthening you for your leadership challenges.
I like that.
Yeah.
I want to emphasize that being still is not being absent. It's being still enough to quiet your mind enough to know what steps to take next.
Well, Jane, this has been wonderful. I've learned a lot with you, and I think our audience has as well. But I want to thank you for sharing your reflections and for being with us today.
Thank you.